morning, good afternoon and good evening to everyone wherever you may be tuning in to today's episode from around the globe. Today we're here in Brisbane, Australia, hosted by Orange High's facility here in Pinkenba. A massive thank you to Andrew, Peter and the whole Orange High team for allowing us to take over and access their boardroom for this afternoon's episode. Today I'm sitting down with one of the most recognisable, connected and prominent figures in the Queensland and extended Australian rental industry. A proud Queenslander and Maroon supporter, which sparks an annual rivalry between himself and his New South Wales supporting wife Tricia. A past HRIA Queensland president, sitting on the national board and past judge of the Australian Hire Company of the Year Award. A continued and dedicated mentor in the HRA's Young Professionals Women in Hire program, and I would say an indirect mentor to many across the extended rental industry. Recently being presented the highest honour and most prestigious award that can be given to an individual by the HRIA, receiving life membership, being one of the very few recipients, and this award not being given out for over 6 years. Being described as a true gentleman, acknowledged for his amazing and astonishing ability to network and facilitating the connection of others. I'd usually insert a job title here, but I would like to welcome the recently retired rental industry legend, Tony Crane.
Nice to spend this time with you this afternoon, Michael.
Tony, you may have recently retired, but it seems like your new job title or job description is rental industry advisor. You're still so extremely involved in your retirement, from helping plan and organise hire shows to taking part in regional events, and we all love still seeing yourself and Tricia at these events all around the country.
Yeah, it's in your blood. It's in my blood anyway, and acknowledging me with life membership just sort of made it more permanent that I wanted to be involved, and I'm staying involved, and I just love it. I find it hard. A lot of my friends are in the hire industry, so therefore it's just visiting friends more than anything and networking.
Tony, you just touched on the amazing acknowledgement being presented life membership by the HRA in your home state of Queensland, being presented the award by a close friend in Jeremy Shaw, the HRA's national president, and being on the very short list of recipients. And I know a holiday was cut short to be there on the night, but run me through your surprise, the emotions and your night in Brisbane.
It took me by complete surprise, and unbeknown to me, Tricia already knew, because she was a bit crook the night before, and I said, look, if you don't want to go to the dinner, we won't bother. But she said, no, we're going. And sure enough, we went along. And then as Jeremy got up and started speaking about it, I said to Tricia, wow, this could be one of my mates. And then all of a sudden I poked her and I said, this is me. They're talking about me. So I was quite surprised. It wasn't something that I thought would ever happen. But I was truly sort of honoured and humbled by being presented with that award. And particularly at such a gala night, it was really, really special.
No, much deserved. And Tony, on behalf of the collective industry and especially on behalf of our business back home in Central Queensland, and I know speaking to Dad after your life membership, we would like to say thank you to not only your involvement and dedication to the world of rental, but more importantly, your impact on small family rental companies just like ours over the years. And I can remember when my parents first initially joined the association, you provided some valuable advice and were an amazing sounding board with some queries and questions that Dad had. And Dad has always credited you for this outgoing eagerness to helping and supporting others just like when he initially gained membership. And I know we're not unique in this experience.
No. And the hire industry is made up of many members, and the majority of them are still family-based members. And so therefore we could never forget those family-based members. So that was really important to me. And it was easy in the job that I was doing, that I was travelling a lot. I could drop into the little towns and say hello and make a special point of catching up with them. So I sort of built a relationship with quite a lot of those smaller family members.
Yeah, well, what is clear and apparent is your above and beyond support and overall promotion of the association over the years. And Jeremy Shaw described you as being one of the biggest advocates of the association in your acceptance speech. Sitting as Queensland President, you've always prioritised meeting members across the country, dropping into meeting hire companies to manufacturers and suppliers and discussing the benefits of membership and growing the awareness of upcoming hire shows. And just for example, dropping into visiting us on multiple occasions in Rockhampton to simply say hello, see what's new in our business, and it's always a great catch-up and absolute pleasure. But Tony, throughout your career, how have you personally approached building and maintaining relationships with others across the country?
I think honesty is the biggest thing, Michael. As long as you're honest, people are happy to spend time with you. And I always make sure that when I'm talking to someone, I say to them, if you want feedback, I'll give you feedback, but it is honest. And if you don't want it, that's fine too. But I just like to try and improve. I'm all about improvement, and you learn so much from one place to the other. So if you learn something from one place, why not share it with someone else? That's what I've found is really important. And the beauty about the association is it gives you the license to go in and visit members right across the country.
Tony, speaking on this experience with the association, you've actually had the experience and opportunity of judging the Australian Hire Company of the Year award. I'd love to know, what did you observe or note as the biggest factors that takes a hire and rental company from good to great, and what made that year's winners of the list really stand out?
I think the biggest thing with a hire company that stands out is the heart. So the heart's got to be in the business. They've got to be proud of their brand. I see that from the minute you walk in the door when you're doing the judging. So anyone can put on a show for the judges, but when you walk in and you can see it right amongst all the workers, that's when you know there's a heart. And that's the most important thing. Then once they start taking you through the details of their business, it's pretty easy to acknowledge that it's not the best gear, it's not the best premise. What it is the people that treat their customers best, and that's what works for hire companies. But then I see it a bit three-way. I see it that there's got to be a relationship with suppliers as well as the customers and their staff. So if they get those three things right, they're a great company.
So for future companies that are investigating or looking at putting in an application, was there potentially something that stood out in their applications, or was it more physical metrics that you saw and observed in the locations that really gave you that differentiation and gave you that wow factor?
I think it's getting the basics right. So it's funny how companies will apply and then they don't have the basics of the layout or something like that. They just want to be involved, which is fine. But it is important to get the basics right. So talking to someone who's already competed, someone who probably has already won, is the best thing that a company should do if they're interested in applying for Rental Company of the Year.
Tony, initially starting with the BOC group and then moving across to FlexiHire, a long stint from 1986 to 2010, holding various management positions at FlexiHire, moving across to Sunset Equipment, and then finishing up your stint in the rental industry of Petro Hire and Ken Mayer as General Manager from 2012 to now your recent retirement in 2023. Tony, what initially drew you to firstly joining the BOC group almost 40 years ago to then moving across to the equipment rental side of the business and kept you progressing in the industry from that point forwards?
I suppose I might go back a little bit further, Michael. I was a fitter and turner by trade. I left school at 15 and did my apprenticeship in a sugar mill in North Queensland. I then went and worked on prawn trawlers up in the Gulf of Carpentaria. And one of my first seagoing opportunities was to take a trawler from Corumba to Adelaide for the Raptors company. On that trip, we got hit by a freak wave, which could have been the end of my days quite early in my career. And from there, I sort of had a lot of respect for achievement. Yeah, you had to achieve. We had to achieve to survive on that little trip. We got towed into Port Welshpool and did a 10-day refit and then got the boat going again. So after that, I worked on and off trawlers for a while. Then I had a mate that was working at CIG at the time, and he offered me 2 days' work cutting up condemned cylinders. So I went in to do that in between going back to sea. And then I thought, wow, this is a fantastic company. It was just a really nice company. So I got the opportunity to progress, and they invested in me. They gave me development, which was really important. So then I just sort of moved around. I went from Cairns to Ingham to Mount Isa to Rockhampton to Port Kembla, back to Townsville, and then to Brisbane with BOC. So I had quite a long stint of shifting around, and I just really enjoyed the challenge of doing something different all the time. So that's what really drove me to perform well in that organisation. BOC then bought FlexiHire, and it was funny because I actually spent some time in a development program of looking at opportunities for the company to expand, and one of the things I looked at was buying a rental company. And then blow me down, they ended up buying a rental company, and I was involved with going across and running that rental company, which was Flexi Hire. I started that in 1st of April 2007. It was the day that we started our new software program. So I think by the end of the first week, we'd lost 5 staff members. Everyone was tearing their hair out, but it was full steam ahead. Roger Toole was the previous owner. He was there to guide me. And then I had Aaron Donnelly, who was my operations manager at Flexi Hire, who was just a treasure to be able to assist me in learning the industry. Was really important. So away we went, and our goal was to grow by a branch a year, every year, which we managed to do going into Townsville, Bowen, Cairns, as we grew the place, and it's just gone to higher stakes since Chris has taken it over and owns it himself now.
Well, I'm glad you survived the wave on the prawn trawler, or we wouldn't be sitting here today having this conversation.
That's right, yeah. No, it was significant. I had a couple of early close encounters. I also came back off a prawn trawler and went back to Babinda for a football presentation night and rolled my car on the way back home to Cairns and had another near-death experience. But I figured that I just needed to settle. My life was all too fast and I needed to settle. So getting into a company like CIG BOC was a great career opportunity. And that allowed me to settle. Then I met Tricia and we started our family and away we went on our merry way.
I'm glad you didn't use all of your 9 lives getting this far forwards. But Tony, after your many years of dedication, you've developed quite the network across the country. Jeremy Shaw mentioned at your award presentation the famous group of Queensland rental industry figureheads and your notorious lunch catch-ups being regularly held at some of the cheapest yet most impressive Asian restaurants in Brisbane, discussing what's new and recent developments of the rental industry. Tony, how has your involvement with the broader rental community really impacted your career and life satisfaction, and I assume gaining lifetime friendships?
Yeah, that's the thing, Michael, is that the people that we meet on a regular basis, Kevy Ennis, Richard Gannon, Paul Davin and myself, we decided to do that because it was important that at times we miss the opportunity to network. So you can mentor down in a business, but where do you ever get to mentor across? And we just figured that if we got together once in a while and if anyone had a problem, we could just talk that problem through and come to a solution. It was also a bit of a gossip session. We got a chance to find out what was going on in the industry and we passed on that information without any secrets being divulged whatsoever. So it was just a great opportunity to get together, and I look forward to every quarter when we can get together. And we had one recently at Kim Khan after I got the award and got a chance to catch up and celebrate, which was really nice.
Much deserved. Tony, the original pilot and origin of the HRIA's Young Professional Program being held in North Queensland 6 years ago, you initially volunteered and have supported people since.
Yep.
And during your Life Membership acceptance speech, you said that what I enjoyed most is the mentoring programs and development of people in the industry. I've been driven by that and had great support in the association in doing that. Tony, how have you seen the culture of the rental industry develop over the time regarding personal development, growth, and turning into a very much a people-centred industry?
Well, Michael, the thing was, being involved in the national board, I could see the quality of people in the Kennards business, the Coates business. So those corporate businesses had great development programs. The hire industry was made up of a lot of family businesses, and there was fantastic mum and dads, as you well know, that run businesses and then have children that come through those businesses. If they can only learn from their mum and dad, they'll always do things the same way. I wanted to try and get some development in place so that they got to exposure to other people in the industry and some of the great things that were happening in the corporate side. And the only way I could see that happening was by a development program through the HRIA. So I was driven to get it done, and as far back as 2015, I was sort of trying to get it done. In 2017, we had our first pilot up in Cairns, and it just went from strength to strength.
No, I'd 100% agree. You mentioning that very much a monkey see, monkey do attitude with people in small rental companies that mightn't be in a Coates or a Kennards or the larger corporations with the internal programs. I know very much for myself, being in a small regional area in a family business in a niche market as well, you couldn't have your blinders on more. So opening that opportunity and this development program was essential, to myself, our business, and I think it's been very similar for a lot of people over the years.
I think the other thing, Michael, is people like to gauge themselves. So where do I stand? Am I good? Am I not good? And by having a development program where you've got people from many companies sitting there in the room with you, you say, yeah, I'm as good as them, or, I think I could learn a bit from that guy. So that's the sort of challenge that you need by having a development program and a network, is so that you can gauge yourself and then improve yourself.
You're talking about personal improvement, and I would love to hear yourself from the mentor's perspective, a success story or example on how this mentor-mentee dynamic has impacted your life, and potentially how the mentee impacted you, challenged you, or challenged your mindset.
Well, let me go further back to when I first got a mentor. I was actually based in Rockhampton at the time for CIG. I'd applied for a regional role and missed out on the regional role, and the feedback was I wanted to know why I missed out, and they said there was just a few things around the people management side of what you did. So they said, we're going to give you a mentor. So I got a mentor who was Peter Hyland, who was a really good friend of mine anyway, but he was a senior manager, and he sat down and just sort of told me some home truths. So there are things that in the way I said things, that there was nothing wrong with it. It was just the way it was delivered. So Peter straightened that out for me, and it was fantastic. I thought, here's stuff for free. I'm getting this for free. And he's happy to come, and we'd normally sit over a dinner and have this discussion. So I thought, wow, that's really valuable. So from then on, I figured having mentors was so important. So then once I got the opportunity to become a mentor, I give them wholehearted support. I've met with my 2 new mentees in the last week, and we've had fantastic conversations. But if I go back to all the mentees I've had through the development program, we're still only a phone call away. And in fact, I was on the phone to Alicia on Monday from Kingaroy, and we keep in contact all the time because you build a relationship. You learn a lot about people, they learn a lot about you, and once again, it comes back to that honesty.
It's that continued relationship for sure.
Yeah, never ends. And I'm happy for it to never end because it keeps me young, Michael. I stay connected to the way the business is running today, which is fantastic.
Yeah, I think it's something that we don't regularly hear being discussed is the mentoring shift, and the rental industry is such an amazing pool of talented people with so much knowledge and so much knowledge they can give to others. And Tony, for those individuals, what would you say, and how did you personally transition and the skills you required to develop and progress from being mentored to mentoring others?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing, Michael, was to actually understand that people are different. Every single person's different, but giving them time. So someone very wise said to me once, listen like you actually care. And it is really important that so often we'll ask a question, but then we'll be thinking about the next question we want to ask. And what we should be doing is listening to what the response is. So I really took time to listen to people, and then it gave you some fuel to then create a path of where you wanted to go. So that's really important in regards to mentoring, is just listening and listening and listening, and not having all the solutions, just knowing the questions to ask to get to the solution.
Tony, what's the best piece of advice that you could leave for new people joining the industry, potentially reflecting from your time as a supplier at BOC and your recommendations to salespeople, to helpful tools you've given to these mentees? And I've heard that you love a vision board.
Yeah. Vision board's really important. And I think the thing is to have a goal. It's so important to set up a goal, to have a plan, and then to build on that plan. Sometimes we can't always hit our plans, but it's important to understand if we don't hit our plan, why didn't we hit our plan? And when we do hit our plan, celebrate that success. We quite often move to the next goal straight away and we forget to celebrate the success. Because if you celebrate the success, you'll remember it and therefore you want to do it again and again and again. So that's my biggest thing, is to set yourself some goals, celebrate your successes, and keep moving along.
So you'd say the reflection is probably more important than setting the goal as well.
Exactly. It's not worth anything if you don't reflect and say, did I make it? Why did I make it? Did I make it? No, I didn't. Why didn't I? And then understand that and move forward.
Tony, 8 weeks ago when we caught up, you mentioned 2 defining words, and you mentioned it, one of them just before as well, towards your approach to life and relationships being honesty and confidentiality. What would you say are the needed qualities, attributes, or skills you believe people need to succeed in life or in the rental industry?
Well, the honesty is so important. The other thing, Michael, is respect. When I go and visit a rental business, I don't necessarily want to sit down with the managing director and spend all my time. I want to go and find out how the guy in the workshop's going. I want to find out where he's come from, what his skills are, what the lady on the front counter, where she's come from, how she got into the industry. They're the things that really are important to me, and it makes them feel important. So it's really around that respect of having respect for every single person in the business, because if they've got the brand on their shirt, they're part of the organisation.
Sure. Tony, during your acceptance speech, you gave credit to a very prominent mentoring figure, and you mentioned him just before in Roger Toole, past owner of FlexiHire, as a key contributor to your entry and sparked your initial involvement in the association many years ago, telling Roger that I should get involved in the association. And he said, if you do, just be the boss.
Yeah.
Following that conversation, you said that you'd take on the Queensland presidency role, and that could have been the best thing you could have ever done. Obviously, we've just mentioned Roger and previously Ken Mayer, and a quick mention to your wife, Tricia, who's been a massive supporter and I would say probably more famous than you in the rental industry
Exactly.
nowadays. Tony, reflecting now on 2024, who are some individuals that you would like to mention or thank that have driven and contributed to your personal development and success?
I think initially Mark Chittick was one of the drivers behind going for the Queensland president. Mark was working for Dingo at the time, and he was a supplier, and he was really keen on getting the association in Queensland jazzed up a bit, I suppose. So he said, why don't you get involved? I'll support you, and we'll get these meetings happening and get them, worthwhile. So that was my goal as soon as I got in, was to make sure that our meetings were fun and were worthwhile. And if I reflect on a couple of the meetings we had, one of them in particular at Victoria Park, we had Michael O'Connor, the dual international, as guest speaker. And I sat down with Michael and asked him all about leadership and working in a team. And I still get feedback today from members that were at that meeting that said that was the best meeting they ever went to because they got so much out of it. The meeting when we launched Young Hire Professionals in Cairns, I sat down with Max O'Halloran, the local councillor up there. Max was just a fantastic guy. He'd played VFL for Carlton, so he had a history. He'd come from Tasmania. So a small fish into a big pond, and he told that story. Those things are remembered by people day in, day out. In regards to the people who I looked up to, were the people, I suppose, initially on the board, the Neil Wallaces, the Gary Kerrs, Ken Maher, of course, has been so important in my life, and I owe so much to Ken for having me involved in his business and his family, which has been really important. Alan Besling was on the board at the time. Alan's such a strong, knowledgeable man in the industry. Tony Simons, who's still there today, just really, really good people. And then Linda Carter-Watts, what a fantastic person she is. And I was lucky enough the week before last that I drove down the Century Cove and celebrated her birthday with her, a milestone birthday, which was really, really nice to do. So those people have been important people, and they're still really close and important people in my life today, Michael.
Tony, something that you recently mentioned to me is that you're always so surprised at what you can offer people. Little suggestions and guidance, a small pieces of advice quickly turns into the development of a whole business plan, which you credited this ability to your time at the BOC Corporation. Tony, how has this, time working with BOC contributed to your long-term, tool basket that you can offer people now in the rental industry?
I think, Michael, once again, going back a bit further, I'm one of 6 siblings, and none of us went to university, but every single one of us have been successful in our roles that we've had throughout our working career. And it's all about the small tools that you get and then using them to your best ability. BOC had great structure around putting a plan in place. When we put a plan in place, we debated that plan to the nth degree. Once we agreed on it though, it was full on implementation. There was no stragglers. If you straggled, you went. So it was really important that that's the way that it should happen. So if you come up with a business plan, debate it to make sure it's right, but then give everything. One of the greatest pieces of advice, I suppose, I got from one of my early MDs was he said, always bite off more than you can chew than chew like crazy. And it's so really important that you do take on a little bit more than what you can possibly handle, but then go really hard and make sure you achieve.
You're saying to bite off more than you can chew and then continue to chew like crazy. There's been lots of developments in the rental industry quite recently. What would you see as the biggest trajectory moves that rental companies can make going forwards? Is it into new equipment? Is it expanding locations, people? What would you suggest to rental companies going forwards?
Good question. I think it's really around people management. You know, every equipment's going to be pretty consistent across multiple companies, but it's really the people and the pride they have in the brand that counts. And the best way to get that is by investing in your people. So therefore, when you're talking to your customers, that employee of yours is selling your business, your brand. So therefore, that customer is going to come back because they want to deal with you or they want to deal with that brand. So that's really important, is that we continue to invest in our people. And I see some issues, you know, as the years have gone by with some of the bigger organisations, and it's happening today, where small companies are being purchased by big companies. Those small companies would employ a truck driver, they'd employ a mechanic, they'd have an apprentice, they'd have an admin lady. Once those things get centralised, we lose those numbers out of the industry. It's really important that we try and keep those numbers in the industry because they're the leaders of tomorrow.
I'd 100% agree. Tony, to wrap us up for this afternoon's episode, I'd like to ask a question of how do you personally define success, and how has this definition developed from the young age of 15 as a diesel fitter and turner up in North Queensland to now your perspective today in your loving your retired life?
Quite interesting, Michael. I suppose success is to do what you don't think is possible to be done. If I go back to my early days, I had no idea that I could possibly run a business, you know, be a branch manager, to sit in a boardroom with highly educated people and then have them listen to your view. Always do the research first. I never went in unprepared, and even for this meeting today, I've spent a fair bit of time just sort of going through what I should be talking about. So really, preparation, making sure that you believe in your points, and then being certain in what you say. So I suppose that's what surprised me, and it just comes along and it's worked really well, and I'm very proud of the career I've had. If I look back, I wished I would have probably got my work-life balance a little bit better and spent a bit more time with my kids. Today is actually 15-year anniversary from when I had my heart attack. So I learnt a lot of lessons along the way, and they were hard lessons, but I've come out this side a much better person.
Amazing. Tony, congratulations. You should be extremely proud of your career, and you should definitely be soaking up your retired life and living to the fullest as much as you can with your wife Tricia. So thank you for your time this afternoon and coming on the Rental Journal.
Thanks very much, Michael. It's been a pleasure.